Salam and welcome back to SomaliDispatch.com and to our Dispatches program. I'm Abdul Ghadir Guled. Following the twin Al-Shabab claimed attacks on Aden Ade airport and in Beledweyne, concerns about Somalia's security situation is rising. Somali and international partners are concerned about the deterioration, and it might not be possible to reverse them. To discuss the security threat, we are joined by Samira Gaid. She is a former head of security and justice of the Prime Minister's office and is currently the executive director of Hiraal Institute, a security think tank in Somalia. I began our conversation by asking her if she could kindly give us a snapshot of the country's current political and security situation.
The current security situation is a bit volatile, and it has been this way for the past year and a half, more or less because of the electoral process and the electoral situation. Because this electoral process has dragged on so much, the security forces have been forced to, focus on the electoral process for an extended period of time. And so what you have is not a lot of offensive operations against Al-Shabab, not a lot of coordination between Somali security forces and partner forces. So not much attack and offensive action, but a lot of defensive action and focus on the politics. So because of that, I think the terror group has taken advantage and has been able to conduct major attacks. One that happened last week that was devastating and killed, a very well-known activist, a female MP that was loved by all across the divide. So we've had incidents like those, and I think they will continue to happen for as long as we have this open-ended electoral process.
Right. Speaking about that incident in Beledweyne, which is seen former MB, God rest her soul, killed, and others, and former other MB as well. It's interesting that we view her as this iconic figure in parliament, but there has been allegations that there are nefarious, things that happen, and there's a lot of tension and a lot of allegations surrounding how come that the terrorist group Al-Shabab is actually gaining ground and might have intel on the inside. What could you say to that, and what is that sentiment like in Mogadishu?
So her killing has really, I think, really shaken the system, and a lot of us are shell-shocked by her killing because it has devastated all of us, because she constantly spoke about this threat, but she never said that she felt a threat from Al-Shabaab, but rather a threat from the system, a threat not to run, a threat not to poke the issue of Ikran Tahlil for a NISA operative, that she was, solidly standing by the family, trying to find out what happened to her. The girl disappeared sometime last year in June. So the threat that she described and that we all know that was facing her was really from the system. And for that threat to actually be, no one tried to resolve it, and then for it to result in her death, a lot of people are looking at it in a questionable manner. Even if you have the best of intentions, or you want to look at it positively, it puts to question why inside a compound where there was so many other very high key personalities, I would say there was a former Minister of Internal Security, Abdurazak Omar, was in the same compound. Former Interior Minister, Godah Barre, was in the compound. President of Hirshabelle was in the compound. And this person was said to have been in the compound all afternoon, had tea with other soldiers. And so for her to be specifically targeted, it puts to question, what linkages could there be between the system and parts of the system and Al-Shabaab. So, there's this narrative always that the only person who would explode himself is Al-Shabaab, and that's true. We've known them to be those men. But then also you can see that there's a lot of contract killings that happen in Somalia and are labeled terrorism. So there's a lot to unpack, and I think it needs a very good independent investigation. I don't think we could just let it go as it happened. An independent investigation is needed, but going by the trend, that's not going to happen, and so this rumors strengthen.
Right, and similarly, the attack in Aden Ade airport, specifically the aviation section of that, or the camp, as they would call it, where it was slated to host possibly the upcoming presidential election. What is that like? It's a similar situation where there seems to be an infiltration of the armed forces, where someone actually got in a very secured area and launch attacks. What can you tell us about that as well?
That one as well, and the timing of it, it's been a 5 years and 5 years of this administration, and that we've never had such a breach, and the breach that happens at this time when there's a really, really hot debate in Mogadishu about where the electoral process should be conducted, whether the speaker's election and the presidential election should be conducted in the camp or outside. And so against that backdrop, to have two men dressed in security personnel's uniform make it past several checkpoints, not just, we are quick to blast AMISOM, but there is a police checkpoint, a NISA checkpoint, an army checkpoint before you get to the camp, before you meet AMISOM. So to get past all those checkpoints, they must have valid ID, they must have a vehicle access that was recognized, they must have had support from the system in that sense, or from parts of the system. And so it was similar, it's a similar situation as the lady, the MP's killing, where you question why now and why in this area, and what is the message that's really behind it.
Right. Samira, what does all of these breaches mean for securing and stabilizing Somalia?
It just lets us know that we're very far off from where we intend to be. So securing and stabilizing Somalia will really need Somalis to really take charge of the security challenges. We have an AMISOM mission that's right now, a resolution is about to be released on this mission, changing it from AMISOM to Transition ATMIS is the name they're going with. And if we ever have any intention of taking over from AMISOM and taking over our security responsibilities, we really have to start negotiating politically between the center and the periphery, resolving the grievances that exist between clans, resolving the grievances that exist between political elite, business community, religious leaders. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And if we keep on in this way where, a political elite comes into office, a number of attacks like this, they become very defensive and insular, nothing is not much outreach is done, then we're just pushing the ball to the next emergency, next electoral campaign season, next president. And so I don't think we have yet understood that this is our country and our responsibility to change its circumstances. I think we have a political elite that has captured the state, that is not allowing for that debate. And, we are hoping for change, and that change needs to come in good leadership.
Right. And speaking of leadership and responsibility, to chalk every attack that happens or perhaps even kills prominent Somali politicians, be they female or male or former or current leaders, to have the opposition use that and say it's, Villa Somalia and the like that are behind this. How irresponsible is that? And could one actually argue that lets Al-Shabaab off the hook and does not focus, where blame should be laid and having society to coalesce in having a resolve on that?
I think we have that huge challenge where, when someone gets to the highest office, I don't think that person is given any breathing space. Immediately after the opposition, the lines are drawn, and everything that happens. I remember early on in this administration, 14th October happened, where we lost more than 600 Somalis in one attack through this truck bomb that was really devastating. And I could see there was a struggle to unify and also at the same time blame. And so this is something that I think is across the political elite. Whoever is in government does not have an easy time, resolving security challenges or other challenges that probably the next person would not be able to resolve. And so it's what I said, it's we have to take ownership, both opposition and government, but that now depends highly on the person who takes on administration to reach out. There has to be that intention to reach out and include others into governance. And as long as it's a winner takes all, the strongest man wins, then you'll always have this antagonism. And then, of course, Al-Shabaab lying in the middle and not picking up on these grievances and really winning because of these grievances.
Al-Shabaab has long, switched their tactic on straight out attacks and perhaps now resorts to, detonating, suicide vests and all of that horrific tactics. But to have them, for example, collect taxes on businesses and at the ports of the country, and actually to have ISIS now, as we've seen a couple of weeks ago, about a month ago, with what's happening in Bakara shops being shut down because they can't afford those taxes. What does that do to keeping Al-Shabaab and the like in play? And how is that even possible in Somalia, where a section of the community in society, actually a prominent section of society in business, to have prop up, these kind of groups, and the government to sit idle by?
This is a challenge I think that we have, is that you have a political elite that's really a bit disconnected from the public. And I wouldn't say it's only the business community that's interacting with Al-Shabaab and such groups, but every other part of society. I would say people seek justice from Al-Shabaab. People meet Al-Shabaab when they're traveling between city to city and pay, taxes while they're moving across the country. They pay these taxes when they're paying for their goods. So we have a problem that we have a government that doesn't have the ability to extend its governance and really have the monopoly of violence in the country. And because that is happening, Al-Shabaab will continue to do things like this. And the idea is for the government to strengthen in ways that it can fight an irregular force. And what we see now is our focus on really regular fighting, forming a military, a police force that is really just conventional, just as AMISOM is conventional. Instead of, looking at how is this irregular group acting, how is it, delivering its governance, how it's doing all of that. And so I think our response is mismatched. And if I think as Somalis took the lead over these operations, as we have seen right now, AMISOM is the one that drafts the CONOPS, the concept of operations in the fight against Al-Shabaab. And AMISOM is structured in a very heavy conventional manner. And if the Somalis could really take the ownership and the lead, then we could change that, and we could, see a different way of targeting Al-Shabaab. I think Al-Shabaab's biggest strength really is its finances and how it collects finances. And it's because it's really threats, it's coercion. I don't think anyone can really protect themselves from an unseen enemy. But as long as you don't focus on trying to, build the intelligence networks that would bring out this unseen enemy and bring them to the light, and you just focus on more military men, more police officers, more community policing and stuff like that, I think we're mismatching our response to the actual threat that we face.
And to that end, with Somalis being spearheading the security and securing of the security in the country, and specifically in Mogadishu, with the ATMIS coming in and taking over from AMISOM, as you alluded to, and the Security Council's decision bending, what is that like? Do you think we can advance the country's security via that way? Do you have any interpretations about how that could unfold?
I think I don't have much hope for this ATMIS, the mission. I think the only change will be the name having transitioned, which gives hope to the international community who are funding this mission, and also to Somalis to think that we're in the last leg of the mission. But I don't really have any hope that they will do things differently. This is because they have been complaining about resources, saying they don't have the force enablers, multipliers that would help AMISOM really take the fight to Al-Shabaab. And that hasn't changed. It's not going to be changed in this resolution. At the same time, they're also, I think, downplaying the role of Somalis and talking about force generation instead of force sustainment. I think we have enough forces. We just need to worry about how to sustain them, get them lethal and non-lethal power. And so that aside, I don't see that's the solution for Somalia coming from this body or this line of effort. I really see it coming from leadership that will really connect the federal government to the periphery, connect the upper class to the lower, bottom-up politics, really resolving the grievances that have existed over the past 30 years that continue to exist. Right now, when we empower government, sometimes we empower a government that is dominating other communities vis-a-vis others. 4.5 clan system that is also, being has been criticized. So the solution comes in, I think, leadership, and a leadership that will really change how we're doing things. But I don't see it coming from, this international-led and supported effort of ATMIS and trying to, strengthen the Somali government through it.
And to that end, Samira, why is the Somali government, the current Somali government, is insisting, given all the challenges the Somali security forces have, why is our government insisting on taking over security themselves and perhaps kicking out AMISOM? What do you think is the motivation of that?
I really think it's just lip service. I don't think there's any intent. And the real, the proof is in the pudding. The real discussions come when AMISOM say, okay, we're pulling out of Barawe, or we're pulling out of a major city. And that's then you see the government running into action and going to Addis and asking Addis, let's rediscuss this. So I think the Somali government can only ask for a responsible management of transition, but I don't think they want a pull out of AMISOM forces as we stand right now. And that's because AMISOM holds important territory that without that territory, it will bring to threat the major cities that this political elite and the government right now sits. And so I think it's lip service. I think there's also a lot of pressure from the international community to move things forward, and the government is feeling that pressure. And that's why we see them attending these meetings with AMISOM and discussing, how this transition will actually work.
Right. And finally, what are the consequences of politicizing the current security situation of the country? And what does that do to the country's security situation moving forward, and what is needed?
One thing is interesting is that the Somali people, the public, even if they have a problem with the government, they really are very supportive of the security forces and because these are the sons, these are their daughters, and also because of how there's that memory of what the security forces used to do and what they should do. So despite, the atrocities that sometimes happen on the lower level, there is great popular support for the security forces. And when they're politicized in this way, both by the government or by the opposition, and politicized in this way, you delegitimize a unit that is supposed to be the solution for this problem that we're having in Somalia. So this delegitimization of the government, delegitimization of the security forces becomes a challenge for anyone else. Even if this administration leaves, whoever comes into place will have a force that is not recognized or welcomed by the public and make their life much more difficult. So I think it's unsafe, and it's really the wrong way to go. Try to keep it just at the political level. Whatever criticism we have of the government or the authorities, let's try to hold them accountable by holding the politicians accountable. The security forces should be held accountable by the ministries, by the executive, by the parliament, but not in this political arena.
I appreciate it, Samira Gaid, for your time and expertise on this matter, and hopefully we can continue to have these discussions moving forward, as the country's security situation and securing the security has a long way to go. I appreciate your time and expertise, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Have a great night.
Thank you.